In the fading twilight of the 1970s, heavy metal was evolving, but no one quite knew what it would become. The giants still roamed. Black Sabbath had carved out the dark, ominous blueprint. Deep Purple and Led Zeppelin had electrified the masses, but beneath those towering shadows, a new generation of the discontented youth was growing restless. They wanted something faster, heavier, more dangerous, music that could match the chaos of their lives and the frustration of a world that felt stagnant and gray. For a young James Hetfield in Downey, California, life felt like an endless search for power and sound. He was quiet, withdrawn, and introspective, haunted by the strict Christian Science upbringing that had defined much of his early life. His father was a truck driver, and his mother was an opera singer, and they divorced when he was only 13. Later on, his mother would die of cancer, refusing medical treatment because of her religious beliefs. This left deep scars that would later fuel the rage and vulnerability inside his lyrics. Music became both a refuge and a weapon. Hetfield found solace in the crunch of distorted guitars. He idolized bands like Black Sabbath, Aerosmith, and Thin Lizzy, studying every riff and vocal inflection. "I just wanted something loud, something that could drown everyone out," he once said. "When I played, the world stopped bothering me." Meanwhile, several miles away, a teenage drummer named Lars Ulrich was living in a completely different kind of life, but one that would soon collide with Hetfield's. Born in Denmark to a professional tennis player, Lars had grown up surrounded by art, competition, and culture. His family was well off, and Lars himself was expected to follow in his father's athletic footsteps. But in the year 1980, after seeing Deep Purple live in Copenhagen and later discovering the new wave of British heavy metal, bands like Diamond Head, Motorhead, and Iron Maiden, Lars's obsession shifted from tennis courts to drum kits. When the Ulrich family moved to Los Angeles in 1980, Lars brought with him not just his Danish accent and competitive energy, but a burning desire to be a part of the heavy metal movement that was exploding in the UK. "I didn't just want to watch it happen," he said years later. "I wanted to be in the middle of it." The American scene at the time, however, wasn't the same. Glam was starting to dominate the Sunset Strip. Bands like Motley Crue and Rat strutted through Los Angeles with teased hair and leather pants, singing about girls, cars, and excess. Lars admired their energy, but found their music shallow. "It wasn't dangerous," he said. "It didn't have that edge that Sabbath or Motorhead had. I wanted something that scared people again." So Lars decided to make it happen himself. In 1981, Lars placed a small classified ad in a Los Angeles newspaper called The Recycler. It read simply, "Drummer looking for other metal musicians to jam with. Tigers of Pantang, Diamond Head, and Iron Maiden." For James Hetfield, who had been drifting between cover bands and garage rehearsals, that ad might as well have been fate. He and a friend, guitarist Hugh Tanner, called the number. When Hetfield met Lars, he wasn't immediately impressed. Lars's drum kit was minimal, and his playing seemed raw and unpolished. "He didn't even have all of his drums," Hetfield joked later, "but he had this energy, this drive. He really believed in what he was doing. That drive was contagious." Lars, for all his quirks, had a vision. He'd built connections with the underground British scene by corresponding with band members and tape traders. He even traveled to England just to see Diamond Head perform and somehow ended up staying at the guitarist's house. "I was just this kid from Denmark crashing on their couch," Lars remembered, "but I wanted to learn everything about that scene." When he returned to Los Angeles, he brought with him not just inspiration, but music. He had bootleg tapes, demos, and contacts, fuel for the movement that he was determined to ignite in America. Hetfield and Ulrich jammed a few times, trying to piece together songs inspired by the aggression of Motorhead and the precision of Iron Maiden, but something was missing. They needed other musicians who shared their fire, and more importantly, they needed songs that they didn't just imitate the British sound, but also expanded it. They wanted something meaner, faster, and more chaotic. By the fall of 1981, Metallica was born, though at the time it was barely more than a name. The moniker came courtesy of a friend of Lars's named Ron Quintana, who was trying to choose between two names for his metal fanzine, either Metallica or for Metal Mania. Lars immediately urged him to pick Metal Mania and promptly claimed Metallica for his own project. The name fit perfectly. It was hard, metallic, and uncompromising, just like the music they were about to unleash. The first few months were rocky. Metallica's lineup changed frequently, and their early gigs were chaotic, loose, and loud. Hetfield's voice was still developing. He had less of the controlled snarl that fans would later know, and more of a raw shout. But what set them apart even then was intensity. They weren't trying to be rock stars. They were trying to be faster than everyone else. To fill out the lineup, Hetfield and Ulrich recruited guitarist Dave Mustaine and bassist Ron McGovney. Mustaine was a fiery, technically gifted player with a volatile temper and a penchant for drinking too much. His aggressive style meshed perfectly with Hetfield's rhythm assault. Dave was the spark, Hetfield admitted later. He had that wildness that pushed us forward, but it could burn you too. McGovney, meanwhile, was a friend of Hetfield's from his earlier band Leather Charm. Though not as technically proficient as later Metallica bassists, he provided stability and equipment. He owned a garage and a PA system. Both were vital for the fledgling band. Together, they began hammering out the songs that would define their early sound, tracks like Hit the Lights and The Mechanics. The riffs were jagged, the tempos breakneck, and the lyrics simple but powerful. It wasn't about polish, it was about impact. By late 1981, they recorded their first rough demo, a version of Hit the Lights, for the compilation Metal Massacre, a project put together by Brian Slagle of Metal Blade Records. The song was an immediate standout, raw and frantic, with more speed and aggression than anything coming from LA at the time. When we heard that track, we knew something was happening, Slagle said. It wasn't glam, it wasn't polished, it was pure adrenaline. Even though the band's name was misspelled as Metallica with 2 T's, it did not matter. The underground metal community took notice. Tape traders across the US and Europe began swapping copies of the track, spreading Metallica's name far beyond Los Angeles. Still though, the local scene wasn't ready for them. People didn't get it, Lars recalled. We'd play shows with glam bands, and the audience just stood there. They didn't know what hit them, but they were about to find their audience. A whole new breed of fans hungry for something real, something that felt dangerous again. Then, eventually, Metallica had discovered a young bassist with a remarkably distinct style, Cliff Burton. Burton, a gifted, classically trained musician from Castro Valley, California, had been playing in local bands like Trauma. His innovative approach to bass, treating it not merely as rhythm support, but as a melodic instrument capable of solos and harmonic depth. This would become essential to Metallica's early sound. Lars and James first encountered Burton in 1982 during a show in Berkeley. I remember hearing him play, and I couldn't believe my ears, Lars said. He had this insane tone, and he didn't just play bass, he added to the song. That's what we needed. Burton was hesitant at first, but the chemistry was undeniable. When Ron McGovney decided to leave the band, he was frustrated by the chaotic rehearsals and ongoing tensions. Cliff was invited to join. In conjunction with this, James Hetfield and Lars Ulrich decided that Los Angeles wasn't the right environment for their sound that they were trying to create. The glam and hair metal scene dominated the clubs, and while bands like Motley Crue and Rat were drawing crowds with makeup and theatrics, Hetfield and Ulrich were chasing something heavier, faster, and more aggressive. The underground Los Angeles metal circuit simply didn't have room for their vision. We needed an audience that actually understood speed and aggression, Hetfield later reflected. Los Angeles was fun, but it was like playing metal in a world that wanted glitter and hairspray. The move proved pivotal. San Francisco, though smaller than LA, had a tight-knit community of musicians and fans obsessed with the latest tapes from the UK's new wave of British heavy metal. The city's clubs were home to bands like Exodus, Testament, and Possessed, and it was here that Metallica would finally find the environment in which their sound could grow unhindered. But the band's lineup still lacked stability. Dave Mustaine remained as a lead guitarist, a talented but unpredictable presence. Mustaine's technical skill and songwriting ability were undeniable. He had contributed riffs that would eventually evolve into tracks like The Four Horsemen, yet his volatile temper and destructive lifestyle increasingly clashed with the rest of the band. Substance abuse, arguments, and late-night confrontations were common, making rehearsals tense and performances unpredictable. Be that as it may, with Hetfield, Ulrich, Mustaine, and Burton, Metallica finally had a lineup capable of translating their vision into something tangible. Rehearsals became more disciplined, and the band began writing the material that would form the backbone of their debut album. The songs were faster, tighter, and more aggressive than anything they had attempted before. During this period, the band recorded the now legendary No Life to Leather demo in 1982, capturing the raw ferocity of their live performances. The demo included early versions of tracks like Hit the Lights, The Mechanics, Motor Breath, and Seek and Destroy. While the recordings were rough and unpolished, they showcased the band's speed, aggression, and creativity in a way that few bands at the time could match. The demo quickly spread through the underground metal community, primarily via tape trading, a network of fans, musicians, and enthusiasts who exchanged cassettes long before the internet made music accessible globally. The buzz around Metallica's raw, unrelenting sound began to grow, and the band started gaining a reputation far beyond San Francisco. People were calling us from all over asking where they could hear more, Hetfield recalled. We had no idea how big it could get, but we knew we were on to something. Amidst the excitement, tension continued to mount. Mustaine's volatile behavior had reached a breaking point. Arguments over songwriting credits, lifestyle choices, and the direction of the band culminated in an explosive confrontation. One fateful night in 1983, after an altercation that escalated backstage before a show, Hetfield and Ulrich made the difficult decision to fire Mustaine. It was brutal, Hetfield admitted later. Dave was brilliant, but he was tearing the band apart from the inside. Mustaine's departure, though painful, marked a turning point. The band quickly recruited Kirk Hammett, previously of Exodus, to fill the lead guitar role. Hammett brought technical precision, creativity, and a temperament that meshed well with Hetfield, Ulrich, and Burton. His solos on tracks like Seek and Destroy and The Four Horsemen would soon become iconic. Joining Metallica felt like stepping onto a rocket ship, Hammett said. I knew this band was going places and I wanted to be a part of it. With the lineup re-solidified, Metallica began focusing on recording their debut album. Securing a record deal, however, was another challenge. The underground buzz had attracted the attention of Megaforce Records, a small independent label run by John Zazula, a metal enthusiast with an ear for raw talent. Zazula was impressed by Metallica's demo and live shows. I knew right away that these guys had something special, Zazula said. They weren't polished, but they had energy, aggression, and vision. In 1983, Metallica signed with Megaforce, setting the stage for the creation of what would become Kill 'Em All. The recording sessions took place at Music America Studios in Rochester, New York, under producer Paul Curcio, known for his work with artists across multiple genres. He was tasked with capturing the raw intensity of the band while maintaining clarity in the recordings. The challenge was translating their live energy into something that could survive on tape, Curcio recalled. The sessions were grueling. The band was determined to push themselves to the limit, recording for long hours, refining riffs, and experimenting with tempos. Hetfield's rhythm work and vocals demanded precision, while Hammett's solos were layered meticulously to preserve their aggression. Burton's bass lines, unconventional for metal at the time, added depth and harmonic complexity, often interweaving with guitar parts rather than simply mirroring them. Ulrich's drumming anchored the chaos, driving songs forward with relentless speed. Tracks like Hit the Lights were engineered to strike immediately, opening the album with a blast of raw energy. The Four Horsemen combined galloping riffs with intricate solos, showcasing the band's growing growing technical ambition. Meanwhile, Seek and Destroy became the definitive anthem of their early career, blending aggression with hooks that would make it a fan favorite for decades. The album's title, Kill 'Em All, reflected the band's defiance and intensity. Initially considered controversial, the name symbolized rebellion against the status quo of the metal scene. When asked about it, Hetfield famously said, "It wasn't meant to be violent in reality. It was about taking no prisoners musically." Upon its release in July 1983, Kill 'Em All was met with enthusiasm within the underground metal community. Though mainstream audiences were largely unaware, the album's speed, precision, and raw aggression set a new benchmark for thrash metal and inspired countless bands to push boundaries. Following the album's release, Metallica embarked on relentless touring, building a reputation as one of the tightest, most intense live bands in the U.S. Each performance was a proving ground, and the chemistry between Hetfield, Ulrich, Hammett, and Burton solidified. The early shows in small clubs, often to audiences of a few dozen, laid the foundation for what would eventually become a global following. By the end of 1983, Metallica had transitioned from an ambitious, scrappy LA band to the forefront of a new wave of metal. Kill 'Em All was more than a debut, it was a manifesto. It defined not only their sound, but also their ethos: speed, aggression, technical skill, and unrelenting energy. The album's influence resonated through the underground tape trading networks, inspiring a generation of musicians who would carry the torch of thrash metal into the 1980s and beyond. The journey from the small classified ad in Los Angeles to the release of Kill 'Em All is a story of ambition, talent, and a relentless drive to create music that would shatter expectations. It's the story of two young men, Hetfield and Ulrich, who refused to compromise, of a bassist, Cliff Burton, who brought melody and complexity to the chaos, and a lead guitarist, Kirk Hammett, who transformed riffs into screaming solos. Together, they forged a sound that would change metal forever. And as the first notes of Hit the Lights echoed across clubs, basements, and tape trading circles, a movement was born, one that would come to be known as thrash, one that would challenge the very definition of heavy metal, and one that would mark the beginning of Metallica's legendary journey. Cliff Burton's influence on the sessions was already becoming apparent. His bass work went beyond simply holding down the rhythm. On tracks like Anesthesia, Pulling Teeth, his bass became a lead instrument, showcasing his virtuistic technique. Cliff made you rethink the role of bass in metal, Ulrich said. He wasn't just keeping time, he was telling his own story within the song. Kirk Hammett's solos, though technically precise, were shaped by a desire to complement Hetfield's rhythm guitar rather than overshadow it. "I was nervous at first," Hammett admitted. "I didn't want to step on James's riffs. They were the heart of the songs. So I tried to add tension and release, a voice that responded to what he was playing." Hetfield's vocals were raw and unpolished, a deliberate choice that emphasized the band's ferocity. His delivery, though not melodic by traditional standards, carried a sense of urgency and aggression that perfectly matched the album's sonic landscape. "I wanted to sound like the song was punching you in the chest," Hetfield said. "Perfection didn't matter. Emotion did. And by the time the final mix was complete, Kill 'Em All sounded unlike anything else on the metal scene. A combination of British-influenced riffing, punk-inspired speed, and raw American energy." Johnny Z of Megaforce Records had already begun strategizing the album's release. Unlike major labels, Megaforce operated with limited resources, but Zazula's enthusiasm and belief in Metallica's potential compensated for the lack of funding. And on July 25th, 1983, Kill 'Em All was released. The album's cover, a stark black and white photo of a blood-stained hammer, reflected the band's uncompromising aesthetic. Metallica had arrived, and they were here to challenge the limits of speed and aggression in metal. Initial reception was modest, but within the underground, the album became an instant classic, and Metallica's name started to resonate beyond the Bay Area. The band's live energy was contagious, and their reputation grew with every performance. It was during this period that the band's identity solidified. They were no longer simply a group of teenagers playing covers and writing riffs. They were a force of nature combining technical skill, aggression, and unrelenting drive. Metallica's momentum continued to build. Kill 'Em All laid the groundwork for the thrash movement that would dominate the next decade. The album also marked the emergence of themes that would define Metallica's early lyrical content. Songs like Jump in the Fire and Whiplash were not just sonic assaults, they were expressions of frustration, energy, and a desire to break free from conformity. I wrote what I felt, Hetfield said. I didn't think about sales or trends, I just wanted the songs to hit you hard. Kill 'Em All was more than a debut, it was a statement of purpose. Metallica had created something that transcended the ordinary. Their debut was a warning to the world. Metallica was here, and they were unstoppable. It's a blueprint. Every riff, every drum fill, and every vocal shout encapsulates the spirit of a band determined to push boundaries. In the words of Lars Ulrich, we didn't know what we were doing exactly, but we knew it had to be fast, it had to be loud, and it had to be honest. That honesty, that energy is what made Kill 'Em All alive. And with that, the stage was set. The thrash revolution had begun, and Metallica's journey was just getting started. The echoes of Kill 'Em All would ripple through the decades, inspiring countless musicians, electrifying audiences, and securing the band's place in the pantheon of metal legends.